Hello, everybody. Looks like we've got a couple of more people coming in, but welcome. Happy Friday. If you can hear me, please wave. Just want to make sure my mic is working. Let's see. Okay, thumbs up. Very good. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Happy Friday. Hopefully y'all have that wonderful bottle of sparkling wine open and you're enjoying that. I'm Scott Jones. Welcome to tonight's Tour de France virtual wine tasting. I'm looking around here and see a few first timers, so welcome. Glad to have you. If you haven't opened the Crémant, I would encourage you to go ahead and pop that cork now. Nothing says get ready to celebrate like the sound of some sparkling wine opening up. And while you're at it, if you haven't opened the red wine, go ahead and open that too. You want to let that breathe a little bit. Make sure the white wine is out of the refrigerator. We don't want that to be too cold. But for everyone that's already on, cheers. Appreciate it. Hope y'all are having a good day. I know this has been a crazy week, so I'm glad we have a chance to spend a little time together tonight and talk a little bit about wine. So I want to say this is a little bit unusual, but if you've joined a Jones is Thirsty virtual tasting before, you know that my focus is really all about empowering folks, helping them learn a little bit about wine, get some more confidence when buying and enjoying wine or ordering wine at a restaurant, and helping folks find really great values. And so we've done tastings all over regions around the world, but one region that we haven't really kind of jumped into this point has been France. Number of reasons why, but this particular tasting is born out of a lot of questions and a lot of feedback from not only Jones is Thirsty readers of my newsletter, but from questions that have come up in past virtual tastings. So, it's not hard to find a really great French wine and spend a lot of money on a French wine from Bordeaux or Champagne, but I'm asked over and over again how you find spots where there's high quality wine at kind of everyday prices, like a good Tuesday night wine that's just as good on a Saturday night. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And also, this is by no means an exhaustive survey, but what we're going to learn about are three areas that I think deliver on really high quality and value. So we'll see what y'all think by the end of the night. So for those of you who have joined virtual tastings in the past, you know that each time I do a tasting, there's a philanthropic component to it. And I usually come alongside an organization that's doing good things in their local community. And we support that organization through our virtual tip jar. And you can make those virtual tips via Venmo through the Venmo account Jones is Thirsty. And that's Venmo Jones is Thirsty. And tonight's recipient of the tip jar is Le Dôme d'Escoffier and the Birmingham chapter. They are doing some really cool things, not only around the country to empower women in the kitchen and just those women who have a real passion for food and wine, but the Birmingham chapter is doing some really cool things too. So I've asked Susan Swagler, who is one of their founding members, to tell us a little bit about the organization. And Susan, if you want to unmute yourself, I'd love for you to maybe just say hello and tell us some of the cool things that you guys are doing in the community.
Thank you, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to explain, La Dame d'Escoffier International is international. It's a worldwide organization of women in food, wine, all kinds of beverages, hospitality of all sorts. There are 45 chapters around the world, and the Birmingham chapter was established in 2013 with 55 members, which was the largest initial chapter membership in the history of the organization. So it was clearly time for us to do this. If you name something about food, we do it. We're restaurant owners, we're food writers, we're photo stylists, we are farmers, we're makers, we're publicists and recipe developers, we're dietitians and nutritionists. So anything that has to do with food, we have members. And I see a few of our members on here tonight, including one of our new members, Anna. So welcome. We like to say that we're funding the future of food in Alabama. And the way we do that is through grants and scholarships. And since 2013, we've awarded nearly $60,000 in grants and scholarships to women of all ages, all across our state, from pro-start high school teams to two-year colleges, to four-year universities, to women entrepreneurs to grow their businesses, and also to nonprofits like the Community Food Bank of Central Alabama to help them as well. Scott, you have been a supporter of ours for a couple years, and we appreciate it so much. Part of this and the French component you put together for us. So thank you, thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to say, we recently had a fundraiser called Champagne and Fried Chicken. We usually have an in-person event, but we couldn't do it this year because of the COVID, of course. So we decided to pivot in July. And we ended up with this amazing drive-through pickup picnic of champagne and fried chicken and awesome stuff and beautiful sides, a French potato salad and fresh greens from Snowsbin Farm. Margaret Ann is one of our members as well. And Kathy G, who's our new president, made the French potato salad, and Ashley Mack did the other salad. Becky Satterfield did cookies. It was amazing. Jennifer Yarborough did biscuits. She has Crestline Bagel. All of these are our members. We have 73 members now. And I'm just so proud of the way that they've come together. And we really, really appreciate your having us tonight and spotlighting us and doing French wines, of course.
Yeah.
So thank you, Scott, so much for this opportunity.
You're very welcome. And Susan, I know many of the members in the organization, and think the world of each person as a professional, but also really appreciate the way that you're going deep and really, coming alongside, empowering women in food and wine and other beverages. Wine is particularly important to me, but doing great work. So happy that y'all could be here, and I just hope that that I can live up to the next part of the evening, which is talking about the wines and in addition to the French food. It looks like your husband wants to sneak out from around back. Tell him it's okay to come back around. It's good. It's good. Just drink your wine. It's all good. I know that so many of you have put together charcuterie boards and have some really fun little nibbles and appetizers and put together. So please continue to eat and drink as we go through this. Don't wait on me to tell you when to drink. This isn't like the military here, where you have to wait on my command. We're all adults here. This is supposed to be fun and relaxing, so have at it. I do want to actually bring a little context to what we're going to do tonight. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and just give a quick overview of where we're going to be going tonight. And this is a map of France, and these are kind of point out some of the most important wine growing regions that you would see throughout the country. And at the very top is Champagne. And when we look at fine wine growing regions around the world, we try to kind of keep everything between, in the Northern Hemisphere, 50 degrees latitude and 30 degrees latitude. So when you're at 50 degrees latitude, you're right at the cusp of being almost too cold to grow high quality wine grapes. And as you can see, Champagne is right at the top of that. It's one of the northernmost wine growing regions in the world. And then if you kind of scoot on around to the east side, we're going down to Alsace over there, right on the border of Germany and Austria. And then going down, we have Burgundy, where we're going to camp out there for a little bit tonight. You have the Jura Valley. And then when you get down to the south there, you have the Rhone, you have Provence. And as you head over to Spain, you have Languedoc and Roussillon. And then as you kind of scoot up on the west side of the country, right there in the Bay of Biscay, where the water is really cold, much, much cooler than it is down there in the Mediterranean near Nice, and has that wonderful warm influence on Provence. But over there near Bordeaux, I think even if you don't know a ton about wine, you probably know about Bordeaux. It's where some of the most famous red wines in the world come from. And then when you go up to the kind of the far northwest, you get to the Loire Valley. And that's where we're going to start tonight. We're going to start in the Loire Valley. So I also want to say that I have the chat window on. So if you have a question, please type it in. I'll do my best to answer it. And if I don't know the answer, I'll sure try and make up something that sounds authoritative. Or you can unmute yourself and just stop and ask me. I try and keep these as interactive as possible. And don't wait until the end to ask questions. There'll be plenty of time at the end. But if you have a question or a comment, please stop me and ask, okay? Just want to make sure everyone knows that. So like I said, we're going to start in the Loire Valley, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the map because I want to get to drinking the wine. But I do want, for those of you who are new to the Loire Valley, that's where this sparkling wine comes from. And the Loire Valley is unique in the fact that it starts at the coast, the Atlantic Ocean, and it moves inward about 250 miles. And it's really like 4 different wine regions kind of put together. And so the western part of the Loire Valley is radically different than the far eastern part of the Loire Valley, which is called the Upper Loire. And if you've ever had the white wine Sancerre, which is 100% Sauvignon Blanc wine that's made over on the far east in the Upper Loire, that wine gets a lot of sunshine, has the ability to ripen a good bit, totally different from the climate that is over near the Atlantic, which is much more influenced by the ocean, more maritime, cloudy, cool, makes light, crisp wines. But what we're going to be looking at is the region of Anjou-Saumur, and that's where our first wine comes from. And so you see the region there in orange called Touraine. That's the famous town of Tours is there. Really well-known region for both white wine, Vouvray, and red wine, Chinon, which is made with Cabernet Franc, which is actually the grape that's in this wine that we're having tonight. But what I really want you to know is this is all about sparkling wine. And so as I mentioned, we want to be looking at great values. And that's why I picked this first wine, which is called Crémant. I don't know if any of y'all have had Crémant before, but in my opinion, this is one of the best wine values in France. I mean, pound for pound, this is where it's at. And Crémant is a sparkling wine, as you can see, and it's made throughout France. Most famously, it's made in Burgundy, it's made in Alsace, and it's made in the Loire Valley, like the one that we're having tonight. And so why is it such a great value? Well, Crémant, regardless of where it's made, whether it's made in Burgundy, Alsace, or the Loire Valley, is made in the classic traditional Champagne method, but it's made outside of Champagne. So you're basically getting the same classic, very time-consuming, but very prestigious form of making sparkling wine, but you're making it in a region where, you know, it's just not Champagne. So you get a super high quality wine because most often it's made with the same grapes that are used to make Champagne in the Champagne region. But because it's not there, you're not paying that kind of that upcharge for Champagne. Now, that's not to say that Champagne isn't amazing. It's wonderful, but I'm trying to, you know, give you some ammo for where you can find some really wonderful values, and Crémant is one of those. And so what does the Champagne method mean? That means that it goes through a secondary fermentation in the bottle. And that's why this bottle looks like a bottle of Champagne. It's got the cage over the cap. It has this, what's called a punt at the bottom, which allows this bottle to hold in an enormous amount of pressure. So they take the grapes that go into the wine, they make, you know, they go through the fermentation just like you normally would with a still wine. And then they blend that wine together. In this case, it's Cabernet Franc, which is a purple skin grape from a few different vineyards. And they make their blend. And then they take that wine and they put it in the bottle, but they add a little bit of yeast and a little bit of sugar, and they put a top on it. And I'm sure for all of you who have been through a chemistry class, when you take sugar and you put it in the presence of yeast, the byproduct is CO2 and alcohol. And so that's what gives bubbles to Champagne and Crémant, is that second fermentation. And that's what makes it so special and such a refined kind of, you know, the beverage that we all know and love. And then it's actually aged in the bottle, and that's what creates this wonderful beverage. So a little bit about the label. Folks often ask about sparkling wine, and we'll take a look at the label. So the first thing you'll see is the producer's name. So Louis de la Grenelle is the producer, and then Saumur is the region in France, or in the Loire Valley. One thing that you don't see, or two things that you don't see on the label that I'm often get questions about, is you don't see a vintage date, right? And you don't see the grape type. Well, the grape thing can be a little problematic if you're new to European wines, but in Europe, it's all about the place. They celebrate where the grapes are grown, where the wine is made. It's less about the grape and more about the place. Many of these regions, they've been growing grapes for hundreds of years, multiple generations. And so for them, it's all about where the wine comes from. So they are all about touting the place name. And in this case, it's Saumur, the region. And the reason that it doesn't have a vintage date is because, and by the way, not seeing a vintage date is no biggie. That's about 90% of all the sparkling wine that's made in the world is made in a non-vintage style. In fact, if you're at a restaurant, you might see NV on the wine list. That just means non-vintage. Has nothing to do with the quality. It just means it's non-vintage, because when you make sparkling wine, particularly when you make Crémant or Champagne, the idea is that it will taste the same year after year after year, which is totally different than like a still table wine where they want, where you see the kind of the year on the bottle, and we'll see it on the other wines. You might see 2018, 2019. That's the year the grapes were harvested. And so the grapes in that bottle are going to have all the identifiers from what happened in that vintage. And so each bottle will taste different from year to year. That's not what the objective is when it comes to making Crémant and Champagne. They want a consistent house style year after year. So they blend wines from multiple vintages, which is where, if you've ever heard the word cuvée, that's where that word comes from. It just means to blend. So you don't see a vintage date on the bottle, and that's cool. That just means it's a blend of various vintages. And then you see the word brut here. Brut is the word that you want to kind of learn. Brut, when it comes to sparkling wine, tells you that it's a dry wine. When you see the word brut on a sparkling wine, regardless of where it comes from, whether it comes from Sonoma County, comes from, whether it's a cava from Spain, a champagne from Champagne, when it says brut, that means it's dry. And so if you're new to sparkling wine and you have a sip, you quickly realize that it's not a sweet wine, it's a dry wine. There might be this impression of fruit, but there's not a lot of sugar, a lot of sweetness involved. So anyway, that's the bottle. And let's look at the wine, right? So for those of you who have a little bit left and want to put some in your glass, you can see it has this beautiful, I mean, I just think it's this kind of gorgeous salmon color. And it's made in this traditional way of making rosé, which is called direct press. And that's how they get this beautiful color. They take this Cabernet Franc, which again are purple skin grapes. They put them in a press, they gently press them, and they let the juice kind of trickle down. And as the juice from the broken grapes at the top trickle down over the other grapes, they pick up pigment from the skin. And that's what gives it this beautiful kind of salmon colored, light, kind of almost strawberry-ish hue. And that's that first run, that direct press, and it's supposed to be, and it's true. It's the most delicate, the finest, juice that comes out of the grapes, because they haven't gotten to the point where they're actually squeezing the skins and pressing out a lot of the tannins, and some of those are more astringent characteristics that might come from the seeds inside. So it's a very delicate way of making it. And I just love the color of it. And when we do these tastings, if you have like a piece of white paper that you can hold the glass against, you can really see that beautiful color. And then you can also see those tiny little bubbles, and it's called perlage. But in a wine that's made in the champagne style, you should see really this dancing of really fine bubbles. If you have a wine that's a sparkling wine that's made, like if you had Prosecco, which is a different way of making sparkling wine, the bubbles are a little bit bigger. And that's, I love Prosecco. We love Prosecco. It's just a different style of making sparkling wine, but when it's done in the secondary fermentation method, it makes these beautiful, elegant bubbles that can just kind of dance to the top. So, sparkling wine's a little weird when you kind of sniff it, because sometimes you can get the bubbles up your nose, but we're going to try and do that anyway. So please play along for those of you at home. But just take a couple of sniffs. Don't overthink it. Don't freak out if it just smells like spritzy, cold alcohol. What you're just looking for is, does anything pop out that maybe triggers a taste memory? So just see what you get. I definitely get like red berries, like strawberry, raspberries even. So definitely kind of, to me, kind of what it looks like in terms of that light berry juice, kind of is, to me, is mimicked in some of the, in that aroma. So let's take a big swig and kind of work it around the inside of your mouth too. It might foam up a little bit, but just like let it touch the entire inside of your mouth. You get that creaminess that comes with a sparkling wine that's gone through that secondary fermentation. That's part of that elegance, is that creaminess and you get that crisp tanginess, kind of like the sides of your tongue are watering from the acidity. And for me, I definitely get like cherries and even a little bit of citrus, just kind of this zestiness. It looks like Suzanne and Scott smells like candy. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like if anybody had like Now and Laters or Skittles over Thanksgiving, which I'm sure none of us had any Thanksgiving candy, but those are always great for wine smells. Though I think I've been told or read that they all kind of taste the same, but we're influenced by the way they look. But nonetheless, this definitely has that kind of strawberry, to me, berry, Michelle, floral and fruity on the nose. Absolutely, that floral is wonderful. And I think, Michelle, that's a great point. That's indicative of that Cabernet Franc, which tends to be a very aromatic red grape or purple skin grape. And the bubbles remind you of Cava. And Michelle gets the gold star for the night because she totally set up a softball or a slow pitch over home plate. And the reason it tastes and reminds you of Cava is because Cava, even though it's made in Spain, is also made in the same style as Champagne and Crémant. And if you joined us for the either my tasting on sparkling wine or the one on Spain, we had Cava in both of those. Cava is another one of my favorite values anywhere in the world. Spain is sweet. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. And if you want to learn more about Spain, you can go onto my YouTube channel, and that those virtual wine tastings are posted there. But Cava, like Crémant, like Champagne, are made in the method that allows them to get that wonderful creaminess from the secondary fermentation. So well done, Michelle. I don't know what y'all are having to pair along with this, but this just looking at the color of it, sometimes I look at the color of wine and it immediately makes me think of like the foods that I want to have it with, but particularly with rosé. And so like the color of this with smoked salmon or boiled shrimp with like a really nice remoulade, even a remoulade with a little bit of cayenne pepper in there to give it some a little bit of heat, because the acidity and the fruit from this sparkling wine helps to kind of balance out the heat and definitely cuts through like the creaminess and richness of something like a remoulade. I've talked about this before, but I'm telling you, I love kettle chips, potato chips done in the kind of kettle style. There's something about kettle chips that just goes really well with sparkling wine. They're also great with Chardonnay, but I love kettle chips with sparkling wine. And Anna's having oh wow, my goodness, Tillamook Maker's Reserve cheddar cheese. Holy smokes, that sounds delicious, and I bet that will be dynamite with this, as well as the red Côtes du Rhône that we'll have at the end. So hang on to a little bit of that cheddar. But again, that's what's so cool about cheese and wine, is that cheese can play so well with different wines. So it can be just as dynamic and delicious with a glass of sparkling rosé as it could be with a real full-bodied, robust red wine. So that's really cool. It looks like Ben is having spicy shrimp ceviche. Man, something that's crisp and fresh, like sparkling wine, where they really work hard to preserve the freshness of the wine, that against kind of that tangy, really bright flavors of ceviche are like a match made in heaven. They're really, really good. Yeah, Suzanne and Scott, yeah, you have the steamed shrimp, which is awesome, but I don't know that most of us make a lot of ceviche at home, or maybe you can, pick some up. I know I know here locally, Automatic Seafood regularly has ceviche on their menu, but you might pick some up and try it with sparkling wine. It's also great with Sauvignon Blanc. It's great with Albarino, Vino Verde. There's just a whole laundry list of wines that are great with shellfish, shrimp, oysters. And the one way that I always like to think about it is just think about where the wine comes from. Like we were looking at the Loire Valley, and especially on the far western part there, where they're famous for their white wine called Muscadet. And in fact, they're so well known for this wine with oysters that when you buy a bottle of Muscadet, it has a hang tag, or a necker, they call it. It's a picture of an oyster, of a raw oyster, because it's so famous and so wonderful with raw oysters. But it's another one of those wines that would be absolutely phenomenal with ceviche. So I'd love to get some feedback on what y'all think about this Crémant, whether you've had Crémant before or whether you're new to rosé champagne or sparkling wine, or new to the Loire Valley. Would just love to get some feedback if anyone's brave enough to unmute themselves.
So I had to get an alternative one because it was sold out on wine.com.
Yeah.
But I looked up the flavor profile of the one you picked and got this one, and I really liked it.
Fantastic.
Crisp and refreshing.
Yeah, and it's I don't have my glasses on. I'm sorry. It's Maria.
Yeah, Marie. Yeah.
Marie, where are you joining us from?
California. San Francisco.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic. Good deal. And so which producer did you end up going with? Do you remember? Oh yeah, absolutely. Debussy. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. And it's funny. I love sometimes I love Zoom, but I can just look at your glass, and I love the shape of that glass, by the way. That's a great wine. And that also leads me to another thing I wanted to say, that if you like this Crémant from the Loire, particularly from Saumur in this Cabernet Franc rosé style, if you like this wine, you're going to like basically any rosé or any sparkling wine that you get from the Loire. This is very indicative of that region. And basically they're going to make sparkling wine with a little bit of Chardonnay sometimes, but it's mostly the white grape Chenin Blanc. And then they're going to make their rosé with Cabernet Franc. So if you like this, you're going to like wines from that region. So Marie, thank you for offering up comments, and welcome from all the way out in the Bay Area. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
I'm actually eating this with some raspberries and Nutella.
Yes.
Occasionally I'll like switch it with like a piece of like Parmesan to change, make sure my flavor profile is like fresh.
Yeah. What's your take on the Parmesan? Because those dry aged cheeses like Parmesan, like Manchego, I typically think of those with because I just like those with red. But it sounds like it's a pretty good pair with the bubbles. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think it, because the Nutella and the raspberries are sweet, and pairing that with the with this one, it's really nice. It's really pleasant, but kind of like I feel like I can get kind of bored of it a little bit, and so breaking it up with the Parmesan is like really nice, because the Parmesan is so dry, and it's like crumbling in my mouth. It's just a different texture, and I don't know, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's cool. It's just kind of alternating those flavors on your palate. So you get like sweet, rich, the acidity from the sparkling wine cleanses that. You go to the aged, cheese, and you get to experience that. Yeah, that's why if it comes to, there are a few wines that are made around the world that you could actually pair from start to finish in a meal. One of those is sparkling wine. The bubbles are magic when it comes to food, and you've got that bright acidity, which just seems to kind of pair with lots of things. And if y'all are like me, bubbles just make you smile. I mean, they just make people happy. It's, I'm sure that you could be sad and drink sparkling wine, but it just has such a celebratory, you know, the effervescence of it just makes you feel like you want to push your face up that way. So let's see, Scott and Suzanne said, thanks for the reminder about the raspberries. Yeah. And they threw in the Nutella as well. Yeah, raspberries and this, and again, going back to the Cab Franc, if you have an actual red wine, a table wine that's made with Cab Franc, it's very aromatic, and you get some of that bright, fresh red fruit flavor, and you can see that echoed here in the wine. So awesome feedback, awesome feedback. Any other questions before we move on to the next one? Well, I want to give a special shout out to a couple of people that are on the call tonight. And I think y'all know that I have a real passion for wine. However, what my friends know is that my passion for wine is only exceeded by my passion for track and field. And so tonight, we are joined by Sasha Leith, who's the coordinator of operations for the Ole Miss track and field and cross country program, and Connie Price Smith, who is the head coach of Ole Miss track and field and cross country. And not only that, Coach Connie is also a 4-time Olympian. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know anyone who's been to the Olympics once, let alone 4 times. And she has a list that's a mile long of accolades, of records and events that she's won all over the world throughout her career. She was also an assistant U.S. coach for the 2008, 2012 Olympic teams. And so anyway, just thrilled. I get to geek out a little bit and talk about wine, and also have the presence of track and field royalty on the Zoom call tonight. So cheers to Sasha and Coach Connie. I appreciate it. Hope you, I know that I've seen the charcuterie board that y'all are rolling with tonight. So sounds like you are in, no one's gonna go home hungry or not having enough wine.
They are not.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
So welcome. Yeah. All right. So let's head to Burgundy for our next wine. And I'm gonna quickly share the map again, and I want to just show a little bit about Burgundy. So Burgundy, I guess Burgundy, if you think about Burgundy and Bordeaux, those are probably 2 of the most famous wine growing regions in the world. Again, if you don't know anything about wine, you've probably heard of Burgundy and you've probably heard of Bordeaux. But what most people don't know is that as a wine growing region, Burgundy it's about 150 miles long in terms of its, from north to south, but it's a very thin wine growing region. And if you ever have the opportunity to go to Burgundy, or if you've been to Burgundy, you know what I'm talking about. There's a road that just kind of runs right down through the region, and there's a little kind of a little valley, and then there are hills. And that's where all the kind of on the hillsides are where these kind of these world-renowned wines come from, but it's a very thin area. So Chablis is part of Burgundy, though it's about 80 miles away. And this Chablis is not the same Chablis that you probably heard about maybe in the 70s with the big jug of California Chablis. That is not the same thing. So if that broke your brain at some point and you haven't been able to have Chablis since, please, I beg you, try Chablis because it is a delicious, it's an amazing wine region and creates some really wonderful wines. The area that we're going to concentrate on is that next 80 miles, which encompasses the Côte de Nuit, the Côte de Beaune, which together make up what's called the Côte d'Or. And then there's the Côte Chalonnaise, and then there's Mâcon, which is where we're going to settle tonight. But as you can see, it's about the kind of the top part of it, or the northern part of Burgundy, which is the Côte de Nuit and Côte de Beaune. The Côte de Nuit is kind of, if you want to put it in general terms, it's where their best red wines come from. The Côte de Beaune is renowned for white wines, but all of Burgundy is really renowned for two grapes, and it's the two grapes that dominate everything. The white grape is Chardonnay, the red grape is Pinot Noir. So if you see a white Burgundy, always going to be 100% Chardonnay. If you see a red Burgundy, it's always going to be 100% Pinot Noir. That's all you got to know about Burgundy, really, is it's Chardonnay and it's Pinot Noir. Okay, so that hopefully will bring a little bit of context to what we're going to talk about now. Just think about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So again, we're going to focus on values. We could spend the next 10 years of our lives studying Burgundy, and it's an amazing place. And the history there is mind-blowing in terms of the way that the vineyards are parceled up. It's just a unique place. But we're gonna go down to the southernmost part of Burgundy, which is Mâcon. And what makes that region so unique is that the climate is warmer there. And when the climate is warmer, that means that the grapes get more ripeness, and they're going to have a little more alcohol. So it's warmer than the northern kind of that Côte d'Or section that we were talking about. And the other thing that is kind of unique to these wines is they typically don't have a lot of oak aging. So they're ready to drink as soon as they're released. And this is kind of a portion, part of the kind of the lecture where I want to camp out for just one quick second and talk about Chardonnay. So Chardonnay is the world's most widely planted white grape. Okay, you see it made in Australia, New Zealand, California, Chile, Argentina. You see it grown in Italy, Spain. It's all over France. You see it all over Washington, Oregon. But there are primarily two types of ways that we talk about it, kind of an old world style and a new world style. The old world style is what we're going to have tonight in this Chardonnay that we're going to have. Either no oak aging or very light oak aging. It's going to be a little bit higher in acidity, not so much fruitiness, not so much of that buttery experience that you get from New World Chardonnay. So New World Chardonnay is what you typically find in California or Australia. Much higher amount of alcohol, darker in color, both because they let the grapes ripen longer. So those green skins on the grape get a deeper green, which adds a deeper layer of yellow, kind of that almost honey color to the wine, in addition to sometimes extensive oak aging, which can create a wine that's really full-bodied and very high in alcohol. And again, folks, it's very polarizing. Folks love that kind of Napa style or South Australia style of Chardonnay. But the kind of the old world style that we're going to be looking at tonight from Burgundy is much more, to me, more food friendly, and makes it a little bit easier to pair with food, and it makes it a little bit easier to have it by the glass. But we'll wait until let you all decide what you think. So this one that we're having tonight, the Mâcon villages, is 100% Chardonnay, okay? So that's what you need to know. And see this bottle that you're holding in your hands? This is a Burgundy style bottle. Everyone look at this closely. If you like Chardonnay, no matter where you buy Chardonnay, no matter what country it comes from or what state in America that it comes from, it will be in this shaped bottle, okay? It won't be in, if you think about Cabernet Sauvignon, those bottles kind of have a high shoulders. This is a Bordeaux style bottle. I mean, a Burgundy style bottle. This is the bottle that Pinot Noir and Chardonnay will come in. So if you buy one from California, from Washington, it's going to be in this this shaped bottle. So that's one of those little things that can help you kind of sift through the thousands of bottles of Chardonnay at the grocery store or your wine shop. So 100% Chardonnay. The other thing that I want you to know about Mâcon is that if you're entertaining or you're on a budget, this is the region that you want to be getting your wines from. So, if you're, at a restaurant and, you want to have wine, but you're not prepared to blow $90, $80 on a bottle of Burgundy, look for a Burgundy from Mâcon. And I'm telling you, you will be glad that you did. There are many, many of the world's most famous wine writers that say that Mâcon is, kind of one of the best, kind of like I was saying with Crémant and sparkling wine. This is one of the world's great areas for Chardonnay values. So let's keep that in mind. So we'll look at the bottle here. So Joseph Drouhin, that's the family that produces this. They've been making wine in Burgundy for 4 or 5 generations now, and they also actually make a lot of wine in Oregon through Domaine Drouhin. But they're one of the foremost of families that are producing white wine, particularly Chardonnay, throughout Burgundy. Again, you don't see Chardonnay on here, but now if it's a white wine from Burgundy, it's always going to be 100% Chardonnay. So you don't have to flip out and wonder what grape is in there. Chardonnay if it's white wine, Pinot Noir if it's red wine. My Chardonnay is a 2019, okay? So these grapes that are in this bottle were harvested last fall, probably last September, maybe toward the first part of October. So like I was saying before, that's what makes these wines so approachable, that even though these grapes were picked last fall, because it doesn't spend a lot of time in oak aging, these wines are meant to be, open and enjoyed. They're fresh, almost like a porch pounder, if you will. They're easy drinking and go with lots of different foods. And so, like we did with the Crémant, let's look at the glass. And again, if you have a white piece of paper, it helps to kind of look at that. And you can see this, it has a kind of a brightness, almost like a hay color versus a darker honeyed color. And one of the things that would tell you is that without even tasting it or putting your nose into the glass, you can tell that it probably hasn't had a lot of contact with an oak barrel. And why would you know that? Well, I'm sure that everyone on this call at some point in their life has either had rum or bourbon. And if you know anything about how spirits are made, that liquid comes out clear, looks just like water. They put it in these oak barrels that have been charred on the inside, leave it in there for 5-10 years. What comes out is this beautiful amber colored beverage. Well, the same thing happens to white wine and to red wines. We don't notice it as much in red wines because we're not, we're kind of looking at the purple of the wine, but in white wines, man, it's that you can just see it right away. So the more time a white wine has spent in contact with an oak barrel, the more of that color and flavor it's going to pick up. So when you smell a Chardonnay and you get that toasted, oaky, smoky, vanilla, you can tell that it's been in contact with a lot of oak barrel aging, and it'll have that deep honeyed color. We don't see that here. So this wine was either fermented and aged in all stainless steel. Maybe it spent some time, maybe a few months in oak barrels, but they might have been older oak barrels, so they weren't going to give off as much of that color and flavor influence. But you can just tell there's a brightness to it and a clarity that lets you know that it's probably going to be on the lighter side of a Chardonnay. Okay, does that make sense? I see people shaking their heads. Okay, good, good. So let's have a whiff, 2 or 3 big. See if there's anything that kind of jumps out. A couple of classic aroma profiles of Chardonnay, regardless of where it's grown, are Granny Smith apples. So like green apples, maybe green pears. I definitely get some floral notes here as well. I don't know. I don't know if my mind wants me to think that I'm smelling some vanilla, but I'm not sure. I just get that fresh, bright kind of pear apple kind of thing going on. Yeah, Michelle, stone fruit. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the cool thing. Remember when I was saying that that the Mâcon is a little bit farther south, because it gets more sunlight. That allows the grapes to ripen. And so in addition to having those classic aromas of Granny Smith apples, as the grapes ripen, that's where it kind of steps into more things like stone fruits, like peaches or nectarine. That is a sign that it's these grapes were allowed to ripen. The cooler it stays with Chardonnay, the more it stays on the green pear side. But yeah, great call there. Yeah, and Lee says getting some vanilla and citrus, and those are all dead on. And Ben getting the pear again, good stuff. Yeah, so let's take a swig, see what you think. Yeah, I love this wine, and hopefully you've allowed the Chardonnay to be opened up long enough that it's not ice cold, because now that it's kind of, if your Chardonnay is kind of a little bit cooler now, it lets all of those flavors and aromas really open up. When a wine is chilled too much, it mutes the flavor. It's like a cold potato salad or cold pizza. It mutes the flavors, but as the wine warms up, particularly a white wine, it lets some more of those flavors really release. I definitely better have another swig just to confirm. What's cool is I get like a real minerality in this wine, like Bourbon County in Kentucky, Burgundy is the soil is made up of a lot of limestone, and so limestone can give it that minerality. But I know some of you picked up citrus in the nose of this wine, but I definitely get like almost like a lemon lime thing going on, which is really pretty yummy. But one more sip. Yeah, very crisp, clean, bright. This is the kind of wine I think of, like like a brie or a camembert, like that, like a rich kind of one of those runny, rich cheeses. Going back to shrimp, like a shrimp avocado salad. I would love this wine with like a po' boy, like a fried oyster, fried shrimp po' boy with remoulade, fully dressed. Big, this would be, I mean, outside of an ice cold beer, I mean, let's be sensible, right? If you're having to think about it with wine, this would be a great wine with that. And also, like if you went to, a restaurant, you had one of those like frito misto platters with like fried calamari and, tempura fried, zucchini and things. This has enough acidity to me that it would be great with fried food. And, got to go back to those kettle chips, salty, crispy. Man, with this stuff, I could eat the whole bag right now, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. So Lee had a question. How do they keep the soil so rich? Does it get tired after generations? Okay, that's a great question, Lee. And here is the dirty little secret about wine grapes, the grapes that end up in wine that we pay money for. The worse the soil, the better the wine. Good soil causes the grapes to grow with too much vigor. They get lazy. The fruit is not as complex and flavor rich. So one of the things that you'll notice when you go to any of the world's great wine growing regions is the soil is pretty bad. They fuss over what the soil is made up of, whether it's clay or silt or limestone or marl. But in terms of nutrients, they purposely they stress the vines out year round. They give it very little water because it encourages the vines to grow very, very deep roots. So they become more drought tolerant. But they're not trying to. They want to be good stewards of the land, but they're basically working with what they've been given based on that unique area and the geographic elements that are unique to that region. So it's not like they're rotating the crops or those vines go in, they last 20, 30 years, sometimes 50 or 75 years. When the plants are not producing great fruit, they yank them out, plant new ones. But it's really weird to get your head around. But vineyard managers work very hard to keep the vine stressed out at all times. And in fact, they will go through at certain times of the year if there's too much sunshine or there's too much water and there's too much leaf growth. They will go and just like you get a haircut, they'll trim the leaves. They will, if too much fruit is on the vine, sometimes they'll go through and do what they call dropping the fruit. Think about it the same way that you would if you were growing tomatoes. If your tomato plant may put out 50 buds, you don't want all of those to turn into tomatoes. You want to kind of clip some of those buds. So let's say you keep 10 tomatoes. So all of the energy in the plant, all the energy that comes from photosynthesis is focused on those 10 tomatoes. So they get the best of everything. Those 10 tomatoes taste amazing. If you had 50, they taste kind of watery. Some of them, they wouldn't get all the nutrients that they need to be really first-class tomatoes. Same thing goes for grapes. So great question, Lee. I just don't want to break your heart and let you know that the nastier the soil, the better the grapes turn out typically. And you don't want them to have too much water. Grapes don't like water. They're very susceptible to mold and mildew if it's too humid. They're very sensitive little plants, but all good questions. So thanks for asking. Oh, wow. Adam is having the little pomegranate seeds. What are those called? Aerials or aerials? Whatever those are, I love those things. They're like little juicy, tart little things. Yeah, that would be wonderful. And then looks like Ben's having some camembert. Yeah, it's I love this wine with camembert. So yeah, thank you, Anne, for clarifying. I appreciate that. Yes, Marie, you have a comment?
Yes. So I keep trying. I'm more of a fan of red and sparkling wines.
Yeah.
And the only white wine that I've had that I've really, really enjoyed was a Pinot Gris. And I have never found a Chardonnay that I really enjoy. And I'm wondering what it is about like I can't pinpoint what it is about Chardonnay that just doesn't.
Yeah, that's okay. I tell people all the time, that's what makes wine so fun, is it's totally subjective. What you like, someone may not like. And I mean, that's just the beauty of it all. And look, the fact that Chardonnay is grown all over the world and is the most widely planted grape doesn't mean that everyone loves it per se. I mean, there are whole clubs devoted to what they call ABC, anything but Chardonnay. And in fact, if you go to my YouTube page, I did a whole virtual tasting in the spring called Anything But Chardonnay, and I was joined by a winemaker who does this fantastic blend. And one of the other wines we looked at was Pinot Gris, which is one of my favorite white grapes. And if anyone's been to one of my in-person tastings, that's usually one of the white wines that I choose because it's so food friendly. And it's, to me, the Pinot Gris is about halfway between a Pinot Grigio and Chardonnay. And just so you know, Marie, Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio are the same grape. They're just grown in two different styles. So Pinot Grigio is historically grown in the far northeast of Italy, up in the Veneto region, where it's very cold and it's near the water, don't get a ton of sunshine. So it makes those crisp, light, spritzy, almost like adult 7-Up Pinot Grigio, right? I mean, we drink it and love it, but it's a thirst quencher. You take that same grape and you grow it like in Alsace, which is where Pinot Gris, it's one of its historic homes on the east side of France, or like in Oregon, Oregon is probably one of the great New World regions for Pinot Gris. You give that grape a little bit more sunshine, not necessarily warmth, but more room to mature and ripen. And that's where, instead of like getting that lemon lime 7-Up spritziness of Pinot Grigio, that's where you get like honeysuckle, you get back to more of those stone fruit flavors, but it's still a pretty light style white wine. It's not as big as a Chardonnay. It still has a lot of acidity, and it has it's not a sweet wine, but it has a little bit of residual sugar, which makes it's one of my favorite wines with spicy food. So like spicy curry, spicy Thai noodles, anything with chili peppers. I love Pinot Gris. It's fantastic. And it's pretty easy on the wallet. Like, you should be able to find a really good Pinot Gris from Oregon, typically under $18. There's some really good $12 ones out there. Acrobat is probably one of my favorite kind of value priced Pinot Gris. But that's a great point. A lot of people just don't like that more full-bodied green apple profile of Chardonnay and prefer kind of something in the middle there, that smoother, softer profile of a Pinot Gris. Yeah, Scott, great observation.
Scott, it's interesting that you mentioned green apple. That's what I chose to pair with this. And I found that it completely muted. Completely, like it just completely canceled. And Marie, I'm with you. I struggled to associate with Chardonnay, but the green apple just completely, like, I was better off with the potato chips.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that, Michelle, is it's like kind of like algebra, because I think green apple is one of the flavor components in the wine, and then you have a green apple, it kind of cancels those out.
Right?
Yeah, and you're just like stuck with what do I have now? But that's a great observation. That's a great observation. Yeah. Let's see. Scott and Suzanne are saying that they agree with you, Marie. They're big fans of Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris. But again, that's what makes wine so fun. I've done many tastings in person where I'll bring a white Burgundy from instead and ask everyone, hey, who in here likes Chardonnay? And then you'll hear like, I hate Chardonnay. And then I'll serve a less assertive, lighter style of it, and they'll think, oh, well, this is, fun. And I'll say, well, that's Chardonnay. So that's what kind of why I always encourage people to try something new. You don't have to love it, but at least what you do or don't like about it, and then it gets you closer to figuring out what you do love. And that's, I guess, half the battle when it comes to wine. It's just figuring out the regions and the grapes that you enjoy. So yeah, all good stuff. Yes, Lee, yes, climate change is definitely having a very dramatic effect on the world of wine. And even if again, we can strip the politics out of it, but what we do know is that over the last 20 years, the growing season is shifting. It's getting warmer in the spring. It's getting warmer earlier in the spring. And harvest is happening earlier and earlier. And in fact, in Spain right now, they are actually moving, if you've ever had Spanish wine, Rioja, which is a region in Spain where they make these amazing red wines that are made with Tempranillo, but it's a very famous red wine growing region. A lot of those winemakers are kind of running to the hills where they're buying all of the land they can buy on these hillsides that are at much higher elevation than they would have ever grown 50 years ago, even 25 years ago, to get cooler temperatures so they can prolong the ripening phase. The same thing is happening in Chile and Argentina, where they're moving up higher and higher into the mountains, to get more water, but also to get to higher elevations so they get cooler days and cooler nights, because the temperature change on the valley floor is really significant. And if you kind of geek out and spend any time reading about viticulture or just the wine trade around the world, I think everyone is in agreement that whatever's behind it, we can disagree about. But the fact of the matter is that the way the places that are growing grapes are changing. And now they're actually growing grapes and making wine in historically cold regions, like regions that were impossible to grow before. In fact, I don't know if any of you have ever had sparkling wine from England, but there are places right on the English Channel that have been like so cold you couldn't even you wouldn't want to stand out there. They make amazing sparkling wines now. There are some parts of Austria and Germany in particular, where they make fantastic Rieslings that were always too cold, that are now they're starting to actually have the kind of climate where they can grow and make wine. So it's changing, and winemakers are having to adjust. And that's the really cool thing about how many of these families that make wine have been doing it for multiple generations, sometimes for hundreds of years. And so they have a lot of historic data around temperatures and both temperature and climate. So they look at both today and historic growing conditions. So we'll see what happens over the next 20 or 30 years, particularly in regions like Burgundy, where temperature is such a critical part of their winemaking. So, but great question. All right, anything else about Burgundy before we scoot on down to the Rhone Valley for our last wine? Okay, well then let's head down to the Rhone, and I'm gonna share my PowerPoint one more time. We'll look at the Rhone here. Again, the Rhone is down in the southeast portion of France, not right on the water, but it's definitely pretty far south, and it runs north to south. There's a very small, kind of slender northern Rhone, and that's home to, again, some of the most famous wines in the world, both red and white. And they have these incredible slopes, very steep slopes, where they have to harvest the grapes like in soccer cleats. and have special ways of gathering and harvesting grapes because the pitch of the slopes of the hillsides are so extreme. And then you get down to the southern Rhone, which is further to the Mediterranean, still kind of a continental climate, but definitely has a little bit more influence of the Mediterranean. And the area that we're going to focus on tonight, again, diving into the value part, is the Côtes du Rhône, and then Côtes du Rhône villages. And that is the kind of this large kind of beige area here that makes up much of the southern Rhone. So again, just to give some context about where we're going to be tonight. And again, in terms of like history, you know, I talked about how some families have been growing and make grapes and making wine for generations, sometimes hundreds of years. Actually, in the northern Rhone, there's a world famous area there called Hermitage, and they have winemaking that goes back 2,000 years. So they've been cultivating grapes, making wine in that region for a very long time. And what comes out of that is they know what grows best there. So in the Rhone, you get grapes like Syrah, which is what we'll have tonight. You have Grenache. They have a white grape called Viognier, another white grape called Grenache Blanc. But those are the grapes that you typically find in the Rhone Valley. And as it relates to the reds, they tend to be kind of full-bodied because it's pretty far south. So again, more sunshine means more sugar, which means more alcohol, more richer wines. So it's pretty hot and sunny down there. But the area that we're going to look at tonight, the Côtes du Rhône, that viticultural designation, about 3/4 of all the wine that's made in the Rhone Valley comes from that area. They make a lot of wine there. And a lot of those grapes go into some of the most famous wines of that region, but it also creates pathways for great wines like, I know some of you had the Perrin, the Côtes du Rhône villages, and some of you have the St. Côme Côtes du Rhône, but that's what allows these wines to have, great bang for the buck. And I mean, we'll get into this, but if you like barbecue or you like stuff off the grill, for my money, there are a few things that beat a really nice Côtes du Rhône. And so let's look at the bottle like we've done with the other wines. So you can see St. Côme here, and if you have the Perrin wine, you'll see that that's the family that produces the wine. You see the appellation here, the viticultural area is the Côtes du Rhône. Some of you might have a Côtes du Rhône villages, but that's the designation. I have a 2019, so that means that these grapes were harvested last fall. So not a lot of time aging. In fact, this wine has very little oak, as we'll see when we kind of put our nose in there and have a big swig of it. But let's look at the color of the wine. You can tell, it's got some ripeness. It's a dark wine, but it's also, it's not completely opaque. There's some translucence to it. So that it's, it's probably going to have a good bit of body, but it's also not going to be like a huge, blow your socks off like big Napa Cab where it's, or like even a Zinfandel, which is like inky dark. You can't even, see to the other side of the glass. So you just kind of get that bright fruit. You get kind of that red rim a little bit around the glass and the edge of the wine. That lets you know that it's a young wine, is that little kind of red area around the outside of the wine. But let's see, let's give it a smell. Yeah, and I definitely get, it's a young wine, just, harvested last fall. So not even a year old, or just about a year old. So rather than, to me, at least, rather than get like dark fruits or dried fruits, I get more fresh fruits. I get kind of that, like red raspberry, I get some blackberries. So it's definitely a lot of that, that kind of, yes, Marie, jamming. That's a great descriptor. And that jammy comes from the fact that there's more sunshine there. So you're getting more of that ripeness. That's, for example, if we were to have a Pinot Noir from Burgundy where it's much cooler, that's not going to be one of the things you would typically say is jammy, because they have to work so hard to ripen the fruit. So jammy is definitely one of those things you get from a warm climate wine. And again, whether it's in the Rhone or Napa or Australia, when you're smelling jammy, you can know right away that it's warm. It's a warm climate. Where the grapes come from is warm. And yeah, to your point, Ben, definitely cherry. I mean, I think you're going to get maybe even like the darker cherry, that kind of that richness. But yeah, for sure. And let's give it a sip. I get a little bit of the tannin. Tannins are the astringent component that's in the grape skins of purple grapes, and that's what kind of dries your tongue out. I get a little bit of that. It's still pretty smooth. To me, too much tannin is kind of jarring. I mean, it's fine if you've got a big, like a steak, but by the glass, I like it to be a little bit smoother. So to me, that smoothness is because this wine doesn't spend much time at all in oak. And so not only do you get tannin from the skins, but you also get tannin from the oak barrels. I think a lot of wines in the Rhone, particularly in the Côtes du Rhône, are fermented and aged in concrete vats versus stainless steel or oak barrels. And that helps to preserve that freshness that allows them to have some interaction with oxygen from the little dimples in the concrete. So lets the wine mature and age, but it doesn't have a lot of that strong oak influence. And I think that's what keeps, and Ben, you mentioned cherry in the aroma. I definitely, at least I get some of that cherry, expression of cherry, maybe some, a little baking spice in the actual flavor on my palate. Yeah. And this wine is made primarily from Syrah, which most of the times in the Rhone Valley, Syrah turns into giant, full-bodied, especially in the northern Rhone. The most famous and most expensive wines are made with Syrah. Here it's a little more restrained, but I definitely, that's what's giving it that, bringing a little bit of the tannin, and also can give some of that flavor of cracked black pepper, which, like with Chardonnay, one of the classic flavor profiles is green apple. With Syrah, cracked black pepper seems to just like be ever present when you're having Syrah. And that to me is one of the things that makes Syrah so good with barbecue. Like I talk about this often, but Syrah and kind of salt and pepper crusted brisket is phenomenal together. Anything with smoke on it, whether it's ribs or shoulder meat that has a good bit of smoke and a rub on it, with Syrah is just a great, Syrah is just to me, a really great barbecue wine. But this, to me, because it retains so much of that freshness, because it hasn't had a lot of that oak aging, and because it's so young, is really kind of a food-friendly wine. Let's see. let's see, creamy leather, Ben. Okay, right on. I gotcha. It's the time of the night when you can say things like creamy leather. But yeah, I get it for sure. You know, again, I think you're picking up on some of that richness from, it may have had like a little bit of barrel aging there. But going back to the Parmesan, those hard aged cheeses, this is also a great wine with that, or aged Gouda. This is also a great wine with blue cheeses like Gorgonzola or Maytag. You know, those kind of funkier blue cheeses are great. And I can't go without saying dark chocolate. This wine with dark chocolate to me is like a wonderful little dessert. Let's see, Adam is having it with Parmesan. Yeah, it's good. It's weird. I think sometimes it's a little counterintuitive that a red wine like this would be good with Parmesan, but it really does. That kind of crunchy aged part of the Parmesan is really terrific. Yeah, Michelle, I'm telling you, you know, again, it's totally subjective, but I'm willing to wager a little that this wine and a little dark chocolate will be a nice little pick me up. Yeah, Anne. So you're having dark chocolate and Honeycrisp apples. Right on. Okay, I like that. Yeah. So any comments or feedback about this one in terms of, you know, likes, dislikes, the region? What are y'all thinking about this one?
Definitely pairs well with the dark chocolate.
Yeah, it's fun.
It heightened the experience of it for me. I've been really struggling to find the nose on it, the palate on it.
Yeah.
The dark chocolate seems to kind of help it out for me some. So.
Yeah. Those a little bag of those Nestle dark chocolate morsels in a bottle of wine, that can be like a shame spiral in 2 seconds. Yeah, you can.
For sure.
That's good. Yeah. Anyone else?
Oh. It's a very mild red, not what I'm used to drinking in California.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and what's interesting about that, Maria, is that if you were to look at a map, even though the Rhone, where this wine comes from, is in the south of France, from a latitude standpoint, it's way north of Napa. Like it's closer to like Portland in terms of latitude. So it's still, even though it's getting more sun relative to other regions of France, it's still much cooler than places that in like Napa, for example, or even Mendoza in Argentina, where they get so much more sunshine and the grapes ripen so much more. So you get those big, full-bodied wines with lots of tannins, and you know, the wines that can age for years and years. And you think about like grilled lamb chops or a big ribeye or something like that. You know, this is a different animal. You know, it's you know, again, this is I mean, it's a fantastic food wine. I've had it many times with food, but it's also just great out on the back patio, you know, easy drinking. So you're right. It probably is more at the high end of a medium-bodied, low end of full-bodied, versus like probably what you're used to, which is squarely in the full-bodied red wine category. Yeah, but great observation. Yeah, Scott and Suzanne are having this with a chorizo. Yeah, again, chorizo with that smoky paprika and this wine. That is just seems. Now I'm really starving, but all good. Yeah, great observation there. Okay, well that kind of we've kind of made our way through at least 3 regions of France tonight. There's so much more that we could dive into, but I'm happy to answer any more questions related to France, related to the wines, related to wines in general, if you have them. I know we're at about 8:30, so I know some of y'all might be slipping out to go to dinner or have other things to do this evening. I'm going to stick around and answer some questions, but for those of you who do need to go, thank you very much for joining tonight. Again, tonight's virtual tip jar is going to La Dame de Scoffier, and you can make those virtual tips through Venmo at Jones is Thirsty. And I hope you all have a great night. And for those of you who want to stick around and keep sipping some wine, I'm happy to do that and answer some questions. Let's see, a couple of special occasion wines from the same region? Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Jay. I would say in terms of the Rhone, if you want to have a wine that's a little bit more special occasion, or you just want to try something that's from a more specific place, I would say that the 2 regions that immediately jump to mind in the southern Rhone are Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Gigondas. Those are 2 regions, and you will see the name on the label. So from here, if you look at this one, it says Côtes du Rhône, you will see Châteauneuf-du-Pape and you will see Gigondas. In the north of Rhône, of the spots like Lotie, there's Hermitage. Those are kind of some of the premier areas there. When you go to the Loire Valley, which was the first region we went to, again, for white wine, you'd want to be looking at something like Sancerre, if you like, Sauvignon Blanc. You can go to, there are Chinon, which is the area in Touraine where they make wonderful Cab Franc, if you like, a light red wine that's more kind of indicative of Pinot Noir. That's always a great area to explore. And then in Burgundy, goodness gracious, I mean, you could spend a lifetime there. Like I said earlier, the Côte de Beaune is really where is kind of ground zero for the world's top Chardonnay, and the Côte de Nuit is really where you'd be looking for some of those world-class red Burgundies based on Pinot Noir that you could go from anywhere to $75 to $700 to $1,000. But they're all really great wine regions to explore. And again, if you like these examples at more of this value level, it should give you the confidence to explore and really learn more places that have a little more specificity to them, where you're getting grapes from a much smaller region. So you might pay a little bit more, but it's really dialing in on you're capitalizing on the geography, the topography, basically what the French call terroir, which are all the elements that come together that are not, that man doesn't have a hand in. So it's the wind, the rain, the sunshine, the slopes, it's the soil, it's stuff that all the kind of intangibles that go into allowing the grapes to grow the way they do and have those flavors that build up in each one of the grapes. Yeah, Lee, thanks for the great feedback. Appreciate it. I'm going to continue. I've been doing these virtual wine events since April. I try and do one every couple of weeks, and I'm going to keep doing them. They're fun. I love the feedback so far. It's just a great way to connect with people over wine. So, I officially called this one Tour de France Stage 1. I think there's always room for Stage 2, Stage 3. There are 21 stages in the Tour de France every year. So there's so much that we can dig into, from sparkling wines to sweet wines to red to white. It's just so much fun. So if you're interested in joining my newsletter, you can send me an email at scott@jonesisthirsty.com, or you can just reply back to any one of those Eventbrite notifications that you received that should have how to contact me. And I'm happy to add all of you or whoever wants to my mailing list. So I send out wine recommendations on a pretty regular basis. I also stay pretty active in terms of wine recommendations on my Instagram account, which is Jones is Thirsty. I think you guys are probably picking up now. Everything is branded Jones is Thirsty, but I try and really try and recommend wines as often as possible. And I really spend a lot of time looking at wines from Costco and Aldi. For those of you who live near an Aldi or have a Costco subscription, because both of those places make some phenomenal wines. And Aldi really, I mean, I've opened and shared some wine with some people that are on this call tonight from Aldi, and you're talking like $6 for a bottle of wine. It's dynamite. So anyway, lots to explore in the world of value priced wine. So feel free to follow me on Instagram or get my newsletter if you want to learn more.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when's your next tasting? I really enjoyed this. This is my first virtual tasting.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, good. Well, I'm thrilled that you joined. I'm hoping, I'm trying to work it right now because I have a bunch of in-person events right in December as we're leading to the holidays. So I've got to find a night that I can do it. And now that college football is here, Saturday nights tend to be a deal breaker for everyone. So I'm having to go to Friday nights, which I don't normally do, but I hope to do one at some point in the early part of December. But I'll let everyone know, because when I send out the next invite, I'll also take the folks that joined us tonight, and I usually give a discount to join for the next one. So I'll make sure everyone knows when the next one is. Yeah. But if you have any suggestions for subject matter, please let me know. Please email me or somehow, shoot me a message. Let me know, because I've got a list. But I always love to get feedback. There's always things that I might not think that people want to explore that turn out to be really great topics that are a lot of fun. And so we can do that too. Yeah, Scott and Suzanne. Midday, sure, okay, I'm all about that. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Well, let's see, Michelle, yeah, I got your message for sure before we wrap up. And let me just say thank you again. Appreciate everyone joining tonight. And I really love the great feedback. The chat comments were great. And some of the interaction that we had was wonderful. And I wish you all a wonderful, relaxing Friday night and great weekend. And hopefully we'll all see each other here again in the next few weeks. So have a great night. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you.